Classic comeback, classic tale of two halves in the NFC Championship game we just witnessed as San Francisco shut down the Cinderella story of Detroit with 27 consecutive points, 34-31, as the 49ers get back to the Super Bowl to face a familiar foe in that game during the Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes dynasty era. San Francisco and Kansas City got together for a Super Bowl 4 or 5 years ago. And of course, San Francisco led that game and Kansas City made a couple touchdown comeback with a couple scores in the fourth quarter to win by, I believe, 11 points in that game. And lo and behold, Kansas City shows up at the Super Bowl again. It was almost two underdogs breaking through on Championship Sunday to make it to the Super Bowl. But it's Kansas City with an upset at Baltimore in a dominant, very defense-dominated performance by the Chiefs, 17-7. And then the more entertaining of the two games, of course, with the Lions bolting out with a huge lead in the first half. San Francisco comes roaring back, and we will take your calls here with the voice of college football, I understand, for anyone who could care less about the NFL. We do this on Championship Sunday, typically. We do this on Super Bowl Sunday as well. Many of you focused on college solely, and then, hey, you love football, you make the transition during the NFL playoffs. Or many of you just love football all the time, or maybe even prefer the NFL. I know that this made me realize near the end of some of these games here today that it's been a few years since I've actually taken in an entire NFL game. It's usually the red zone's on. I'm working on college football stuff on Sunday afternoon. The red zone's on. I'm watching a little bit. I'm not watching. I'm back and forth, in and out. I'm not the NFL fan nor the NFL expert that I was years ago. But hey, it's still fun. It's still entertaining. And college football fans, you got to admit, it's still the best football on the planet. Obviously, these are professionals. All right, we'll get right to your calls because I want to hear from you. Again, this is not, I'm not an expert on the NFL. I know who the players are when I see them running around the field, mostly these days because of me seeing them play in college, more so than knowing how good they are in the NFL. So this will not be a masterclass on a breakdown or analysis of the two championship games, but I want to take your calls and we will get right to it with a guy who's mighty happy, expects so much out of his beloved Kansas City Chiefs. Our first call coming in from DeReal MVP. DeReal, congratulations.
Hey, Mark, how you doing this evening?
I am doing great. I'm sure you are as well.
Mark, I almost never have perfect days in my daily existence. I don't believe in that concept, but if there was ever such thing as a perfect day, this is about as close as you could possibly get to a perfect day.
Okay.
Mark, I mean, it was just beautiful. You know what? You have a lot of Michigan fans in your channel and chat. And yes, I have called the Lions pretenders the entire season. They were the best pretenders of the contenders. The Lions are not a good football team, Mark. They're not a great football team. They're a good football team, but circumstance is what got them to this point. Not their level of execution, not their head coach, nothing like that. They are just pretenders.
Okay.
So I just want to hear if any Michigan fans want to come on and explain to me why the Lions do what the Lions do, and that's choke. This is what they do, Mark. Honestly, this is what I consider a 1% mentality, what we saw from the Lions today. We got to go all in all the time, and we're going to go bankrupt most of the time. That's what we saw today from Dan Campbell. Oh, it's 4th and 3 and we can tie up the game? Go for it. Oh, we're up like 14 points? Go for it. That's the only button he was able to hit. Let's just go for it, Mark. You know what? Go for it.
Well, as I understand it, he goes for it, and he successfully goes for it more than any coach in the league. Thought I heard that.
Yeah, that's correct, tonight, Mark, but you have to understand time, score, and situation.
Sure.
Just going for it all the time doesn't mean the next time is the correct decision. If you were playing a team that is more talented than you, which is what the San Francisco 49ers are, you need to take the points when they are available. If the 49ers are on this massive momentum spike and you can do anything to alleviate it, You do whatever you can to alleviate it.
I will say this. So I don't necessarily accept for these being crossover or an overlap of fan bases between Michigan and the Detroit Lions for obvious reasons. I'm not really understanding your your beginning mantra there, but in regards to
Well,
the
there's a guy,
Detroit
Mark,
Lions,
named Moose in the chat who always talks trash about the Lions and the Chiefs. So if Moose wants to come on and explain himself tonight, I would love to hear from him.
well, I just don't think necessarily, unless I've not looked at the chat, see where this is a time to disparage the Detroit Lions. They've advanced in the NFL playoffs further than they have since 1991 and certainly put up a better showing this championship game than the one I remember against the Washington Redskins that season. A game that I remember better than the one that I just watched, just because I was more in tune with the NFL. So this is a great season to be embraced for the Detroit Lions and their fans. And certainly they wanted to close it out and get to the Super Bowl for the first time. So it's got to be mighty disappointing for Lions fans on that part of the equation that they came up short, but they were a sizable underdog. As you mentioned, there's no question San Francisco is a better team. The better team triumphed in this game and took over the game once Detroit, some of their mojo ran out at halftime. But it was an excellent game and an excellent effort by the Lions.
I understand that going into this game, Mark, but in the NFL especially, if you have a 17-point lead, I don't care where that game's being played. That should be a game you win. You at least have the lead in the fourth quarter. Come on, Detroit. You should be better than this. My goodness, Mark, it was just horrible. And yes, Moose, I saw your comment. The Detroit Lions are pretenders, beating the 10-8 Rams and the 9-9 Bucks to get to the NFC Championship game. Whoop-de-doo. Who cares? I don't. If we ranked the NFC teams this year, they would probably be fourth or fifth. I would take San Francisco over them. I would take the Dallas Cowboys over them. I would have taken the Philadelphia Eagles before they completely collapsed off the face of the earth. And there's an argument I would take the Green Bay Packers over them.
Well, I get your point, Ariel, that if we went through paths to conference championship games, there would be much tougher ones. There's no question about that. But it's not like they're the first to have arrived at a conference championship game having faced a couple fairly marginal teams. It's been done before.
Right, and I consider those teams pretenders. If you lose with the first legit great team you face, you are a pretender in a playoff game. That's just my classification for those groups of teams. Now, Baltimore, in my opinion, they're not pretenders because throughout the entire season, they killed every single good team they faced. I mean, they had the NFL record for most games won by 14 or more points. So they're not pretenders, in my opinion. Honestly, today from the AFC, I want you to go, Mark. Sorry.
Well, we can go two different paths. You're taking the path of you're evaluating the talent and evaluating the play of the teams and then saying basically Detroit had what, a 12-5 regular season, I believe?
Detroit, I think, yeah, something like that.
Okay, 12-5 regular season, which is pretty damn good. But anyway, you are making the assessment that you think that there were other teams, and it's not a crazy analysis, but that they more or less made it to the NFC Championship game because they were positioned well in the playoffs, and there was a situation where they played a couple mediocre teams, and they got to the NFC Championship game. I'm taking it more from the slant that here's a franchise that has not won a championship since 1957. They've not contended for anything since then. The last time they went to an NFC Championship game, they got completely obliterated, and they just have not been on the map at all. Dan Campbell takes them over. What he lose his first 10 games, and he went 3-13-1 the first season. They got better last year. They came back from 1-6 to almost make the playoffs. Then he turns in this Cinderella season here, and they take possibly the best team in the NFL, certainly the best one in the NFC, down to the wire. And now in terms of taking on the analysis of the coaching and the blunders that it could have been made, I'm not really prepared to do that. I got to admit, I had these games on from start to finish, but I got to say, maybe I've just lost so much interest in the NFL that the third quarter was a blur. I think I slept through half of it, and I just don't remember what happened in the third quarter. And suddenly I see that there's a football game. So in terms of the 4th and 3, I know that, well, I certainly questioned John Harbaugh in the first game, and that's what I thought we were going to talk about when I see the real MVPs here on Championship Sunday and his Kansas City Chiefs as a 4 or 5 point underdog win in Baltimore against what's been a powerhouse this season. They were talking about some of the metrics of NFL dominance by certain teams in the regular season, and the Ravens had one of those kind of seasons. But you're calling about the latest game and being disparaging toward the Lions. So, I'd have to go back, and I know that he did kick it when there was a thought there at the end of the first half that he was going to try to extend it to 3 touchdowns, possibly down near the goal line on a 4th down play when there wasn't much time left. But he did the conventional route and sent out the field goal kicker. So it was a great season by the Lions. Dan Campbell's doing a heck of a job. Yes, they did have a fortuitous path to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, you said a lot there, but like the first, I'll say half of your statement about the Lions, they're just happy to be here. They may have had an easier path, but they're the Lions. You know what? All that sounds like to me, Mark, that's a moral victory. They can get a moral participation trophy if they want. If they want, I'll give them a round of applause. Good job, Lions. You made the Final Four. Woohoo! Listen, Mark, as some of us understand, losing the AFC or NFC championship game, some of us would call that our worst season in half a decade. Yes, okay?
I get that. But let me say something. I can only understand your approach to this call if one thing has happened this season, and that would be that your Kansas City Chiefs and you have taken a shot from Lions fans about Kansas City not being what they've been in the past, and you're not going to make it this year, and it's the Lions year, and you've taken a lot of crap from Lions fans.
Well, particularly from that guy in the comment you've highlighted, particularly from him.
Okay.
So, you got to, if you're willing to give it out, you got to be able to take it. And Mark, I want to kind of combine both games because I think there was a thematic theme for this season for these games. And it was 2 teams who know how to win, won, and 2 teams who don't know how to win in this situation lost. I think that could sum up the entire day. I mean, you had Baltimore. Baltimore, in my opinion, was better than Kansas City today, especially in the second half. But they just kept making dumb decisions that costed themselves. From Lamar Jackson throwing in triple coverage to Zay Flowers standing over a Kansas City player and throwing the ball to Zay Flowers just a few plays later, trying to extend the ball when at the 1 yard line, getting punched out in Kansas City recovering. And then, with the Lions game, we've already went over it with Dan Campbell and his hundreds of coaching decisions that were all bad and horrible.
Yeah, I see these as 2 different games. So I get the theme of blunders and player decisions that went the wrong way that were questionable, i.e. Lamar Jackson, and then also coaching decisions. But from a approach standpoint of what these teams were supposed to achieve, I see those different. As Baltimore has the outstanding season, they're a dominant NFL team. They've been here repeatedly. Lamar Jackson has not had the best fortune nor the best play in NFL playoff games, and especially 2 championship games, or is this his first championship game?
First championship game.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, the first game, I see it as this is a season lost for the Ravens. They're at home. They're hosting their first championship game in franchise history. They're the dominant force in the AFC this year, and they continue to make blunders. Yes, that the play that Lamar Jackson made trying to throw through 4 guys in the end zone was just ridiculous, only down by a touchdown. And yes, that was after the field goal. It was still 17-10, correct? I believe, yeah, he went for the end
Yes.
zone. They had already kicked the 51-yard field goal to get within a score. And I was surprised, I think, earlier that same drive that John Harbaugh called for a spread formation and a pass on 3rd and 1, and they got away with it after they lost 2 yards when they converted on 4th and 3. And yes, Zay Flowers, my goodness, I don't know that a guy had a worse 5 minutes of football for any of these 4 teams today, when he went from making that tremendous play downfield in which he was wide open, but he runs it down to the 15-yard line or so, 10-yard line. And then he makes that ridiculous taunting move in which he not only taunts, but he pushes the dude down as he's getting up. And it was just, that's just Bush League beyond belief. There's one thing, I know we could have a disagreement among fans in terms of the taunting aspect of the game and the trash talking, that it's part of the game. But yes, when you stand over a player and taunt, and we would even probably have a lot of people in the chat that would say they're grown men, they can handle it, all of that. I totally get that. But if we're going to allow it, then are we going to allow it? We could allow it on every play, then there would be taunting. But it was, I grew more disdain for that cheap shot act when I saw him pin the dude to the ground as he was getting up, and then he taunted. And then, of course, it's poetic justice a few minutes later when he stretches out for the goal line, he fumbles, and then he's on the bench right after that play, striking his hand and cutting his hand out of frustration. I would have been frustrated too, but his own idiocy led to his frustration.
Right, right. And he's a great wide receiver. I think he's
Yes.
going to improve. He's just a freshman, and he had a great game outside of those decisions. Also, a way Kansas City got a field goal was it was in near the end of the first half, and there was some pushing back and forth with Kelsey and I think Roquan Smith, and then I don't know who else came up and headbutted Kelsey and gave an unsportsmanlike conduct foul against Baltimore, which gave them 15 yards. Then they had a roughing the passer call against them, which is another 15 yards. So Kansas City got a field goal out of that drive when it shouldn't have been anything.
Yes.
And in that tight of a game, a 10-point lead versus a 7-point lead is massive.
JT Thompson on the screen here makes a comment about the Chiefs game plan. And I don't think Tony Romo and the coverage of the game did enough for the viewer to explain why this Kansas City defense and its game plan was so effective. I'm there the entire time thinking, this is a great defensive scheme. It's a great effort. They're in Lamar Jackson's face. They bring the house. The only touchdown they scored was when he juked 3 guys and they brought the house. And obviously that got Zay Jones behind a defender for him to loft a beautiful touchdown pass. But besides that, it was a tremendous game plan from a defense that was overmatched, or supposed to be overmatched physically. And I was just, the Kansas City Chiefs defense played way beyond what I expected. Although, again, you're talking to a guy that only knows the broad narratives. And I know that this has been obviously an offensive driven franchise during its renaissance here, but this particular team is more defensive oriented, and the offense has been more pieced together than previous Kansas City teams.
Right, right. Especially with drop balls, Mark. I mean, my goodness. I'm glad our drops, it felt like they may have migrated to San Francisco and infected the Detroit Lions with all their drops today, Mark. But yeah, Kansas City has been notorious for dropping the ball, lining up soft sides. It's been a horrendous season for our wide receivers, and very frustrating for Patrick Mahomes, because he'll do some amazing spin around play where he's off balance. He'll throw the ball 30 yards down the field. It'll land perfectly in the wide receiver's hands, and they'll somehow drop it. And it's just been that type of season for Kansas City.
Yeah, and we saw some of those, and that to me is the most frustrating thing in football, because that's the one thing I believe that we can all relate to, is going outside, regardless of whether you've ever played any organized football in your life. throwing and catching a football. And we certainly, none of us can throw it like those guys can throw it on Sunday. So what I can let off the hook the left tackle who lets an elite edge rusher blow by him. I can let off the hook the safety who allows Derrick Henry just to truck him over and can't make the tackle, even though that's a blown tackle. And you should be better than that at the NFL level and all those things, because those are elite athletes making plays and making somebody else look embarrassed. But just to flat out drop a football with nobody in your face and absolutely no resistance, that's about as bad as it gets at the NFL level.
Right. I'm not sure if you remember the Bills end of the first Bills-Chiefs game, but there was the worst thing I think a wide receiver could potentially do. He didn't even drop the ball. His foot was offsides. So his foot was beyond the line of scrimmage, and Travis Kelce caught it and threw it back a lateral to Kadarius Toney, ran in for a touchdown. No, because his foot was half a foot offsides. The whole play got called back and they lost the game because he couldn't line up properly. That's horrible for any wide receiver to do, but at the NFL level especially.
Yes, they have the easiest job in terms of lining up and just watching the ball. Yes.
Right, and there was something Tony Romo said at the end of the Kansas City-Baltimore game, Mark, is he said if Kansas City were to play Lions, they would probably be favorites. But if they were to play San Francisco, they'd be underdogs. When is Kansas City not going to be doubted, Mark? I mean, Kansas City was underdogs against the Bills. Kansas City was underdogs against Baltimore. Now they might be underdogs in a neutral site game against the San Francisco 49ers. Why is Mahomes being doubted? When if he wins this game, he could be the second greatest player to ever play the sport.
Moose is doubting the Chiefs by 21 points.
He can doubt him, Mark. I think Taylor Swift has a song about doubters. So maybe she'll play it at the Super Bowl if she makes it there.
She's got a song about everything at this point.
Yeah, I know. Well, listen, every kingdom, Mark, means a king and queen, and our king is Travis Kelce and our queen is Taylor Swift, okay?
Oh boy, let's not take it down that path. I might take some shots that I shouldn't be taking. So, all right. Very good, Daryl. We've got some other callers here. Congratulations to your Kansas City Chiefs and another Super Bowl appearance.
Thank you, Mark. And, I know this will hurt you physically for me saying this, but I wasn't satisfied with this win today. I thought Kansas City played bad. And if we play like this, I don't think we're going to win the Super Bowl. So we got some things to work on. Hopefully we can get them worked on before the Super Bowl, Mark.
Daryl, I can agree with the second statement. I think it's always prudent to look at your team's performance and then try to project it forward to say, hey, were we good enough today, win or lose, to do what we need to do going forward? So that assessment I can live with. But the first part of that, please just revel in your team's accomplishments and enjoy them for the day.
I'll be honest, Mark. I was kind of sad at myself and disappointed that I didn't even celebrate beating the Baltimore Ravens. I was just like, oh, we're back in the Super Bowl. Yay. And that was the end of it. There was no joy.
You need to go through like a 25-year Super Bowl drought is what needs to happen now.
I hope not, Mark. I don't want to be the Detroit Lions. But anyway, Mark, thanks for having me on. Oh, and do a wellness check on Corey Bratta. They hired Tim Lester for offensive coordinator down there, and he's currently doing a live stream, but he's not actually on it because he's down that bad.
I understand all this. Corey gave me a call and I knew about the hire from Corey Bratta. Corey Bratta called me. He even told me that he said, Mark, you can let everybody out there know that I'm not broadcasting live today because I am so upset about this offensive coordinator hire. So yes, he gave me permission to let everyone know that, but I got the call from Corey letting me know about Tim Lester. Yes. But thanks for that, Daryl.
No problem. Thanks for the update.
Yes, I just posted a video on the Iowa channel breaking down Kevin Johns, the Duke offensive coordinator, and what he could possibly bring to Iowa's offense, and then didn't have enough time to crank one out for Tim Lester because I knew it was down to those two. And I got to thank Erica Goldberg, one of our faithful viewers who's probably watching Corey right now, or watching Corey's channel and the offensive coordinator breakdown on Iowa. But Erica alerted me to those two being the top two candidates. And then I did a little research and found substantiated that. There were pictures taken of Kirk Ferentz in town interviewing those guys. And then I was able to take off on at least one of them who was turned down for the job. Apparently, it sounds like the job may have been offered to the Duke offensive coordinator, Kevin Johns, but they could not come to an agreement financially. All right, back to the NFC and AFC championship games. We got Jeffrey on the line. Jeffrey, what's going on?
Hey, Mark. Glad to be back on. Those are some good games. Kind of nice. You got NFL coverage now, for a little bit here. I know you don't watch it that much, but I do enjoy the NFL, even though there's a lot of things I do like about college football better. That some of it's kind of going away with the changes that are being made and everything. It's kind of making it more like the NFL. But I will say there was just tons of drama. Like I don't ever, usually post as much as I did today on Twitter. But my mind, I was just rolling with stuff to say with what was going on today. And the real just added fuel to that. Like, again, I love not being first sometimes because just hearing what other people were saying. And then you make comments about it. But, I mean, for one thing, you got the real. And I know if you're still watching, Drew, I'm not meaning this in a bad way. You're saying that people doubt Kansas City, really? And if they're an underdog, per se, that means that they're being doubted. That's not true. Because look at Alabama being an underdog to Michigan. Most people still thought they would win the game. Even Michigan fans were nervous. I mean, no one said Alabama was going to steamroll them and it was going to be a blowout, but Kansas City's not doubted. Like last year, they were an underdog a little bit to the Eagles, I think. I picked them to win the Super Bowl last year. And then you had Kelsey saying, we were doubted. No one believed in us. And I'm like, no, what is wrong with everybody? No, I get it if you want to add that as your fuel, Kelsey, to fuel you to win. But no, that is not true. That's all fabricated. Kansas City's not being doubted.
I completely agree with everything that you just said. And if the athletes themselves need that to fuel themselves, I really don't get it, but that's fine if that's what they need, because I would be thinking, well, I'm kind of trying to deceive or fool myself into thinking that there's a narrative out there that's truly not there. And we all know that the Kansas City Chiefs are highly respected. Pat Mahomes as one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Andy Reid as being a great soon-to-be Hall of Fame coach when he finally hangs him up. We know the respect that they're given, and there has to be technically, based on the betting line, technically a favorite and technically an underdog. And like you say, with the Eagles and Chiefs, I believe the Eagles were a 3 or 3.5 point favorite. That is not disrespect for the other team, a field goal favorite status in the Super Bowl. I completely agree with you. I think it's an overblown narrative. I'm sick of it. I think it's stupid where these Hall of Fame athletes like a Travis Kelce, with all due respect to his playing ability, but if he personally needs that, but he just sounds like a fool when he's blubbering off at the mouth about being disrespected. It's just idiotic.
I agree. It's not like Washington with Oregon when they were like a 9.5 point underdog or whatever. Like that's a little bit different, but still, I 100% agree. And I mean, the thing is that it's more like people just, I wouldn't say like are getting sick of the Chiefs. It kind of is, but it's not that they're disrespecting. People just don't like them right now, unless you're a Chiefs fan. Because like I like the Chiefs, fine. I had no issues with the Chiefs. Like, I like Andy Reid. I've always liked Patrick Mahomes fairly well. I know some people have grievances with him, but, like, he's really talented. He's not that, much of an issue for me. But then, like, with Kelsey, like, they start winning, Super Bowls. And like you said, just the stuff that he says. And now Taylor Swift's entering the ring. And, like, nobody – I'm sorry, but football fans don't care. Like, I mean, only people that care about the Taylor Swift stuff are people that like Taylor Swift. And I'm not saying anything against those people. But It doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm just watching the game and they show it 100 times. And then I just see all over Twitter, people getting mad about it. That's not what I mean, Darrell. I'm just saying that when you win a lot, people don't like you. People don't like Bama, Georgia, Ohio State for that reason. But then you add Taylor Swift to the mix, it just gives more of a reason for people not to like him.
It's nauseating. Yes. And it's not necessarily Taylor Swift or Travis Kelce's fault. I've not watched enough to know whether they seem to be putting themselves into that position and seeking out the acclaim and seeking out the attention. It doesn't seem to me. They just happen to exist, and she's the biggest pop star in the world. I get it. And so CBS, Fox, all these networks are making a business decision that they already have the football fans. The football fans are going to watch. You're not going to drive them away. They're watching a football game. So they're going to put up with whatever they have to see. Taylor Swift every 4 plays, looking up at the ceiling or jumping up and down or whatever she's going to do. But they know that they're going to. I remember being at ESPN when there was a certain president, Mark Shapiro is his name, when he was in charge. And this is about 2005 range. He actually told us, he said, we are going to do everything we can to bring in fringe sports fans or people who don't even care about sports. So if there's a celebrity, we're going to bring them in the booth. If there's a storyline of so-and-so's dating so-and-so, you're going to see them, all these different angles. And you could definitely see it with the broadcasts of the games over the next 5 to 10 years, that's what they hit on, because you figure you've got the sports fan, you've got the fan of that. They're not leaving. They'll get annoyed, but they're not going to give up on their sport. But you're going to possibly, I don't know how much in this day and age of the internet, I don't know, when you can get your fill of Taylor Swift anywhere you want. I don't know how much the Taylor Swift fans would be sitting there watching the Chiefs and the Chargers on a Sunday afternoon just to see Taylor Swift every 3 or 4 minutes for 8 seconds. I don't know. I can't answer that question, but it is rather annoying. But it's kind of like, before I give you the time back here, Jeffrey, similar to the Tim Tebow phenomenon. I didn't blame him. He was being given great quarterback, all-time great college football quarterback. But I remember in one of the SEC championship games against Alabama, the first one that Florida won, that Tebow scores a touchdown. And then on the ensuing kickoff, the coverage somebody on the coverage just lit up the Bama return man at inside the 10-yard line. It was just a picture perfect hit, just laid him out. And Jim Nantz, who was doing the game? It would have been Vern Lundquist at the time doing the game with Gary Danielson. They did not tell us who that guy was. They were blubbering on and on about Tim Tebow and the touchdown he just scored, and that Tim Tebow was responsible for this hit on this Alabama kick returner because he inspired the team so much that, and I'm like, seriously, this dude plays special teams for Florida. Can you just give him one little shining moment? I don't even know who the guy is. I got to look him up on a roster because you don't even know what his name is. And you're not telling us. This pisses me off because we're hearing it. It's a 3.5-hour Tim Tebow show anyway. Can we hear about the coverage dude that just made this awesome hit? That kind of stuff drives me crazy. But it's not Tim Tebow's fault. So I never got mad at Tim Tebow. It was the coverage of these guys. And again, being at ESPN, it was shoved down our throats for a few years that if it's Tom Brady, LeBron James, I forget who it might have been at the time, but it was those two for sure. Anything they do, anything they say is going to be shoved down everybody's throats. And we're going to have to hear it all day on every talk show because that's what people want to hear.
I'm 100% with you. That was awesome. That I mean, you're absolutely right, though. I mean, it doesn't matter who it is. Like LeBron James in the NBA, Zion Williamson when he was at Duke in college basketball. That's all you heard. I like Zion, but I'm like, why? I'm watching a North Carolina game against Virginia, and we're talking about Zion's dunk that he did 2 nights ago. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, I don't understand it. I just don't get it. And they pan to the same, people like LeBron. If you watch a Lakers game, they pan to him all game still, even now. Like, he's really good. But, I mean, like you said, it's not the person's fault, though. I like Tim Tebow. I was old enough to watch him play as a very little kid at Florida. And when he was with the Broncos, I was rooting so hard for him. That pass to Demaryius Thomas, rest in peace to Demaryius Thomas. But that play, I was like, the Broncos. And I'm not even a Broncos fan, but, like, that was just so cool. But, yeah, like, sometimes it is cringy, though. And, like, with Taylor Swift, I think it's just worse because, like, she's not a sports player, or anything like that. She's just a pop artist. And, like, a lot of people don't care about pop music in general or her in general. And it's not anything against her. I don't have anything against her. But, like, I don't want to see it all the time. But, like, I'm with you. I know it's spot, the eyeballs and the coverage and everything. But like you said, it doesn't make sense because people get just, like, she's got like billions of views on her songs on YouTube or whatever. It's like, I mean, like, people watch her there, but, like, I guess it's not enough, like, turn on the TV. There she is too. Well, in the football game, I can watch it with my boyfriend or husband now. It's like, wait a minute. Shouldn't you have been watching before and supported your husband's team? Or no, it's like, now I'm watching. It's funny, but it's cringy though. And, like, especially to reel back the point before, just the Chiefs, they're winning, and now people are just it's annoying with everything going on with them. But it is what it is. I will say, though, to actually get to the games real quick before, because I know there's probably other callers, but like to talk about the games real quick. With the Chiefs, they're playing, the Ravens, and I picked the Ravens to win. And people were telling me, you can't bet against Patrick Mahomes, Jeffrey. You can't. And I'm like, I know that. I picked them to win the Super Bowl last year. I don't normally do. But the Ravens are the better team this year. And they were in the game. But what in the world are you doing, Ravens? All those mistakes. Like, I know Zay Flowers is a rookie, but my goodness. I know Darrell already talked about it. But all you have to do, I know you're losing, but just go down at the 1. That's all you have to do. Like, the taunting thing, that's dumb. But he made up for that with a catch the very next play. But then you reach for the end zone on the next play. All you have to do is just go down and just sneak it in next play. I know you're reaching for it. I get it. But I feel like the Ravens got into a syndrome where, like, they're down 10. And they're doing everything that they possibly can to make up the deficit, right? If they were down 1 score, they might not have been panicking, but it just seemed like they were panicking. Lamar's throw, that's not Lamar Jackson. People are like on Twitter saying he sucks. He can't throw. He can't play. And I'm like, did you watch him this year? I watched him all year. He's been making, people look terrible out there in the secondary. He's been dropping dimes. They're saying this is the best Lamar Jackson has ever thrown the football. And then it's like, okay, he threw it in triple coverage. For one thing, the guy raised his hand. That's number 1. So that was the receiver's fault for saying, I'm wide open when I'm clearly not. And then number 2, there was interference. That was not called. And there was a lot of bad calls in that game, like tons of bad calls, so much so that people are saying, articles, oh, man, the refs need to be investigated. I'm not saying all that, but there were bad calls in the game. Few interferences that were not called. And then number 3, Lamar shouldn't have thrown it. Yeah, but it's just like they were behind and they were trying to come back and they messed up a lot. Like, if that's a tie game, they're not making those mistakes. So it is what it is, but the Ravens were the better team and no one can change my mind. Chiefs are really good. We know they've won 2 Super Bowls and Mahomes is great, but, like, outside of the last play where Mahomes throws it to Scantling downfield, which the receiver core for the Chiefs has been bad all year until that play, but it's like the Chiefs didn't even do that much. And then they were saying the defense is elite. It was a masterclass. How many times was Lamar Jackson just in the pocket sitting there and no one was rushing him? He's just sitting there. Like, that's a defensive masterclass. It's not a defensive masterclass. The Ravens outgained the Chiefs 2-1 in yards, but it doesn't matter. Points matter, not yards. The Ravens didn't score points, but they had the yards. So the Ravens were the better team.
Okay.
And then on the other,
to add to that, because I don't watch enough NFL to really analyze the 2 teams. I know that it's been told to me all season that the Ravens are the best team in the NFL and that the metrics back that up, and that the Chiefs obviously went 11-6 this year. They didn't have a great regular season, and no big surprise that they've turned it on in the playoffs. And so here they are after they beat the Dolphins and Bills. But so, yeah, I would in no way debate that the Ravens are the better team, but of course the Chiefs were today.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's all that matters. Like, the better team doesn't always win. And to your point, I did a poll saying how many people thought like who was going to win the Super Bowl when there was 4 teams left, and 45% of people picked the Ravens. Like, everybody was going the Ravens. They had that good of a team. I mean, they blitzed the 49ers, who were in the Super Bowl. Brock Purdy had 4 picks in that game. They won by like 30 a few weeks ago. But again, it doesn't matter when it's one game. It's like March Madness, single elimination. It's not the NBA with games, 6 and 7 and all that. So it is what it is. Chiefs are really good. We know that, but the Ravens should have won, but their mistakes. And then the Lions, 49ers game real quick before I get out of here, because I know you got other callers. Appreciate you for taking my call. But yeah, that game is almost more frustrating to me, because it's like I picked the 49ers, but I was rooting for the Lions in a way, because I'm like, they haven't won anything and they're this close. And Dan Campbell, I think he is a fantastic coach. I like Dan Campbell, but take the points. Take the points. The first time you're up 24-10 and you don't kick the field goal, I'm like, all right, I get it. You want to, just take them out, right? But in the first half, they kicked the field goal to go up 24-7, which I'm like, all right, that's fine. That they did the right thing there instead of going for it. But usually Dan Campbell does, but he wanted to go up 3 scores. So I'm like, why didn't he do it again? But I understand you wanted to just take him out. But then the next time, when the tide was already turning, Jahmyr Gibbs already fumbled the football. Like, everything's just falling apart for you. And then you do it again, 4th and 3, and you go for it. And I'm like, that makes no sense. You've lost all momentum now. Like, it's tied now. Kick the field goal. And instead they go for it, they don't get it, and the game's just shot after that. And I'm just like, I don't understand it. And then at the end of the game, I know they scored the touchdown, but it's like, kick the field goal again, save the time. And then you're running plays and you're eating clock. I'm just like, I don't understand it. Risky decision-making type coaches, it either works or it don't. And I'm not going to say Dan Campbell doesn't know how to coach, because that's ludicrous. He's a great coach. What he's done to this organization, Detroit sucked so much in the past. And I know DeReal's like, this is what Detroit always does. Do you know how much better Detroit is right now than they used to be? I remember watching Detroit with Matthew Stafford, and he was trying to win 5-6 games out there, and he was getting sacked a million times, and he would throw picks at the end of games because he couldn't do anything. I mean, it was horrid. So yeah, the Detroit Lions are way better. I'm happy for him, but the decision-making of Dan Campbell just blew the game. It did. It absolutely destroyed the game. And if those plays had worked, then everybody would be saying he's a genius. And I'm not saying he's dumb or a genius. It just didn't work. In that situation, you have to kick the field goals.
Yeah, so understand, of course, that you can make the wrong calculated decision and your players can bail you out. Or you can make the right calculated decision and it doesn't work out. But there are better decisions to be made. And it's not always. It usually lines up with what the analytics say, but not always. Because the analytics don't know how good your team is, and your quarterback doesn't know how good the defense is, doesn't know the flow of the game or the momentum of the game or any of those things. It just technically knows you're at the 37-yard line. It's 4th and 3, This is what you do. You're down by 8. That's what you do. But it doesn't analyze the play on the field or the flow of the game. So great coaches need to be able to take the context of the game and the flow of the game and understand their team and what the strengths and weaknesses of their team and the opponent, and put that with the game situation and the analytics. And years ago, it would drive you nuts because coaches were way too conservative. All of them were way too. It was the complete opposite. And it was like they all had were just taught that this is what you do. 4th down, you kick. You do exactly this. Then we've come a long way. And then you've got guys like Dan Campbell, yes, who have taken it to an extreme and basically just, we're going to have this full throttle approach. We go all the time because we got to show that we trust our players and we're not afraid of anything. Well, no, that's not the way to go either. It's a review and an analysis of each situation as it comes and the status of the game to make the right call. And again, it may not work out, but it usually will if you make the right decision.
I agree. And I mean, it's like Detroit and the Dallas game. I don't know if you saw that game a few weeks ago, but like Detroit, they got screwed on the 2-point conversion. Yes. Like with the whole, did he report thing? That was just asinine. It was terrible. The Lions should have won, that they scored, but then they push him back because there's like substitutions or whatever. And then he goes for it from like back at the 8. And it's like, take the extra point now. Like, you got screwed, yes, but just take the extra point, and instead he goes for it again, and then the Cowboys win. It's like stuff like that. It just doesn't make sense to me at all. But you're right. I mean, analytics, they're great, and statistically they can help you out in a lot of ways. But yeah, they don't understand what's actually happening on the field. I mean, like Tom Allen was Mr. Conservative, and then he's going out there 4th and 2 against, these top teams like Penn State, and he's running the ball up the middle. And I'm like, your O-line is so bad, and you've got this fantastic NFL type talent defensive line, yet you're going to run the ball at the middle. It's like, if you're going to go for that, you got to pass. But it is what it is. I mean, human beings that make mistakes, and some calls make mistakes, or players make mistakes. It is what it is. I mean, it's like with the Colts. I mean, Tyler Goodson dropped the pass. It was a decent pass from Gardner Minshew, and then they ended up, not being able to make the playoffs, and the Texans wouldn't even have got there. So there's just a lot of examples like that. But it was a fun day of NFL action. I appreciate you for doing the stream, Mark. It was a lot of fun coming to talk about the NFL. Thanks for taking my call. Hope you have a great rest of the show. But some good games, but a lot of drama, and the Super Bowl, it's going to be a lot of fun, hopefully. And I'm sure most people want the 49ers to win, except Chiefs fans.
Jeffrey, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for the support, and want to remind everyone that Jeffrey's got a great channel here on YouTube as well. Only Talk Sports. So check him out and what they've got going there.
Appreciate
all right, Jeffrey,
that,
thanks for calling, man.
Thanks for having me on, and have a great rest of the show, Mark. Everyone like and subscribe.
Speaking of YouTube channels, we got the Jacksonian here as well. So you can check out Jackson with the Jacksonian right here on YouTube as well. Jackson, what's going on tonight?
It's going pretty good. Just getting ready for another busy Sunday night. How you doing, Mark?
That's right. And that's a good cue to let everyone know that I'll be here as long as there are people. So we've got a decent crowd, and we've got people calling in. I'll hang out and wrap up the championship games. But for the long form discussion and debate tonight, of course, it's the College Football After Dark show that's starting right here on the same channel. College Football After Dark here in a few minutes. Jackson, what's going on?
It's going pretty good. Just taking in what happened with the Chiefs, Ravens, and the Lions, 49ers. Unfortunately, Dan Campbell costing the Lions with his being a little too chancy on 4th down, not just once, but twice. It was just not good. But I am wondering what's going to happen with Ben Johnson, though, because, I mean, his choices are he's going to be Nets head coach, the Seahawks, the Commanders, or he could decide to run it back. Now, if that were me, I'd want to run it back in Detroit, see if I can be a part of a winning staff that leads the Lions to Super Bowl. But what would you do if you were offensive coordinator Ben Johnson?
If I'm offensive coordinator Ben Johnson and I can get an NFL head coaching job?
That's the Commanders.
Yes,
replacing Pete Carroll at the Seahawks. I mean, first, yeah. And you stay at the Lions for another year, but there's better jobs that await for 2025.
Well, my answer was going to be that, first of all, I got to tell you, I didn't even know who Ben Johnson was until today. So I've not been watching the NFL for the last 5 years. So
there's a lot of Ben Johnsons, the Western actor Ben Johnson on those John Wayne movies.
We've got the great sprinter Ben Johnson as well from years gone by in the Olympics. But so I just found out who Ben Johnson was and that he was an NFL coaching candidate. I heard the Commanders. You're telling me the Seahawks as well. So if I'm Ben Johnson, of course, this all has to do as well with whatever his career goals are. But if he's interviewing for and that high of a candidate for NFL head coaching jobs, you got to assume that that's his goal. And I would be a little bit concerned that if I stuck around Detroit and didn't take an NFL job, that sometimes hot commodities become less hot commodities the next season, depending on how good my offense is and depending on our performance the next season. But if I'm not comfortable with and don't have confidence that these ownership groups and the front offices are good enough to help me build a winner, then I may pass on those jobs. I think sometimes coaches that are coming up through the ranks are a little bit too quick to jump to jobs where the ownership and the front office are not stable and are not building winning formulas. They just jump to the first NFL job, and I get it. But so it would be based on my assessment of the Commanders and the Seahawks and their ownership and front offices.
I'm just glad that weird dude Dan Snyder doesn't own the Commanders anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I'm so sick of that guy. I especially feel bad for Will because he's a Commanders fan. It's just like, man, don't make him suffer through this. But yeah, I think the Lions got a great future ahead of them, but all Coach Campbell has to do is quit taking so many chances on fourth down. Just go for the field goal and you're good to go. But I mean, there's a lot of people that would probably blame him for going for it on fourth down, but some people could say same thing about, do you blame Coach Osborne for wanting to go for it on 2 in the 1984 Orange Bowl against Miami? That's the what if. What if they tied it? Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, well, with Tom Osborne's decision, I respect him wanting to say, I didn't win the national championship on a tie. We are here to win the game. However, the more calculated decision is just to kick the extra point. You're the number 1 team in the country, and you most likely will win the national championship because everyone else has a loss. Fortunately for him, it didn't seem like it was going to come through for him at any point because he kept running into Miami and Florida State in the next 5 or 6 years. But it was nice to see them break through 11 years later. That
is true. And, I know I'm not going to get mad at coaches too much that go for it, but I just don't want to see Campbell become like another Brandon Staley, which who we kidding? He's not going to be like Brandon Staley. Coach Staley was a complete and total disaster at the Chargers. I mean, dude constantly went for, the Chargers Raiders, for example, week 18, 2021, instead of going for the tie, which would have put the Chargers in the playoffs, he was going for it big time, making some bad moves. Oh, I see the Nevada helmet. That's awesome.
Neil Campbell's in the chat, and in honor of Neil, who says, OMG, I caught a stream. Neil has been a great supporter through the years, so I found the Nevada helmet in honor of Neil, who purchased the Nevada helmet, I believe.
Nice. I love it. Man, it's going to be interesting. And I do hope to see Kyle Shanahan get his first Super Bowl as a coach. Because, his first Super Bowl when he was the OC at the Falcons, we saw how that turned out in Super Bowl 51. Then we look at Super Bowl 54, 49ers blew it against the Chiefs. I just hope, for Kyle Shanahan's sake, that he's not blowing his chance at another Super Bowl again. I hope he can get it, but if he doesn't, question is going to be whether Patrick Mahomes can catch up to Tom Brady's Super Bowl record. And I'll be honest, with all that Taylor Swift coverage, you would think people would be talking more about whether the Chiefs dynasty is more like the Patriots dynasty from the 2000s and 2010s, but we didn't hear a lot of that until today, honestly.
Yeah, well, they've got a ways to go, but they are on their way. I don't know how long Andy Reid's going to be around, but I'm not wanting him to go away or anything. I just he's obviously been NFL head coach now for about 24 years. All right, Jackson, anything else?
That's about all, Mark. Thank you for letting me come on here. I appreciate it, and it's great as always talking with you, man.
Jackson's got a great YouTube channel right here, the Jacksonian. Is that the best way to find it here on YouTube?
It's at youtube.com at JacksonJohnson979.
Okay. All right, Jackson. We appreciate you being here, man.
Thank you for having me on, man.
All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. A lot of GOAT conversations in the chat, greatest quarterbacks of all time. Oh, man, we could do a stream on the greatest quarterbacks of all time, whether that be in college or the NFL. I am down for that. Maybe we'll do a series on quarterback U, running back U, tight end U, offensive line U. We'll go through all the positions. We'll do that in college football. But yes, I am all in on an NFL all-time greatest quarterbacks list. And you're probably thinking, Mark, you're a voice of college football guy. You don't even watch the NFL much anymore. And my Sunday afternoons for like the last 5 years are basically spent working on this channel and sitting there with the red zone on and then thinking at like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I have no idea what just happened. I had it on, but I'm working on video ideas and going through box scores from the previous day and all that other business. However, I will say, for as much as I know about college football, you take the NFL from pretty much the beginning, but certainly from about 1965 to 70 on through to about 5 years ago, and I'd pretty much go up against anyone when it comes to that block of time, those 50 or 60 years of NFL. So I certainly have much to say about anything in the NFL during that time frame. So in terms of the current game, I'm not keeping up with it, but historically, yes, I am down for that and ready. So let's go to our next caller, which is Adam's on the line. Adam, what's going on today?
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I am doing just fine. How are you?
All right, great. I'm doing great. Great to talk to you. I'll be short. I was watching the games tonight. Epic choke by Detroit, but it got me thinking back to college football. And one of the things I was thinking about was, I think it was since 1980, there's been, I think, 7 teams that have been wild cards with, I think, between 5 and 6 losses that got into the playoffs and went on to win the Super Bowl, including the 2007 New York Giants, who were 10-6 and ultimately beat the previously unbeaten Patriots. So it got me thinking, well, why don't we do something similar like that in college football, where we have the Big 5 power conferences. In each conference, we have the conference champion and a wild card in that conference. That gives us 10 teams. Then we have 2 at-large teams that are chosen to round out the 12-team field. Because I think what the NFL shows you is that teams that have multiple losses, nonetheless, have gone on 7 times since 1980 to win the Super Bowl, including over a previously unbeaten Patriots team. So the focus on wins and losses is not as important, or doesn't have as much primacy as the focus on the quality of the team. So why not do it the same way in college football? And we could do it with the 12-team playoff by picking a wild card and a conference champion in each conference and 2 at-large bids. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that.
My first thought is that the disparity of talent in college football is so much greater than the NFL. The NFL, these teams are so close in regards to talent and ability and skill level, experience, everything. You don't have this cascade of elite teams and seasons in which the 5th or 6th best team in college football isn't anywhere close to the best team.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But I would also say that we could make the same argument, say, about FSU, Ohio State, Michigan, maybe even TCU, maybe Oregon. So there's still a degree of parity, I would say, in the top maybe 15 to 20% of teams that is similar by analogy to what's going on in the NFL. And if we did it the way the NFL does it, it would remove a lot of the discretion that people find problematic in choosing teams, which was so evident this year and even last year when a 2-loss Alabama team was out. So it brings more structure, places less emphasis on wins and losses, and recognizes that teams with multiple losses that might not otherwise get in get a shot. And when you look at the precedent of what the Giants did, for example, in 2007, and 7 teams have done since 1980, wouldn't that be a more orderly way to do it? And wouldn't that be a way that recognizes that, like you said, you can't really compare – well, you didn't say this, but I'm saying you can't really compare wins and losses when there's different talent disparities. But when Division I college football has 20% of the teams pretty reasonably close, wouldn't that justify maybe giving that approach a shot rather than what we have coming up?
Well, my first response is that I'm surprised that this is coming from you because you were the one near the end of the season. And I'm not picking on you in any such way because I generally agree with you, even though I don't think it's the direction I would want to go, because I want to see more of a structured approach to selecting playoff teams and a more objective approach. But you were saying, let's just put the best teams in the playoffs in college football, regardless of what conferences they come from. Just let's go with the best teams. And it's pretty obvious that these are the best teams, Georgia's included, et cetera, et cetera. And now it looks like you want to go with a more standardized model where going forward, we could see, and most of us expect, that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to separate from the other two conferences and be much stronger. And you are vying for giving a Big 12 or ACC second place team the same status as a Big 10 or SEC second place team, regardless of their record, what they showed us, anything. And then my last point would be, if you run through the NFL since 1980, and you mentioned the Oakland Raiders, they were the first wild card team that season to win the Super Bowl. They were 11-5, and they won they won 2 road playoff games after they won the first one at home. Anyway, and you bring up the Giants. So the Giants, that team was 10-6. The next team that beat the Patriots was 9-7. So they had the worst record ever to win a Super Bowl. So that would be equivalent to what? A 7-5 college football team now in a 12-game season being allowed to participate in the college football playoffs. And just look over the landscape of this season and try to find a 7-5 team that could compete in a playoff and that anyone would feel good about having earned that spot.
Right. So I think you wouldn't find a 7-5 team, but you would find a 2 or 3 loss team that might get in. So what I'm saying is not really inconsistent with what I've said previously. I think by giving automatic bids to the top, to the conference champions, the likelihood that you're going to get the best teams is fairly high. And by giving the wild card to the second place team in conferences like the SEC and Big Ten, you're still going to likely get the best teams. But it rests on the assumption that no third place team in the SEC is likely to be as good or will not be demonstrably worse than a second place team in the SEC or Big Ten. At the very least, it would be hard to quantify. So, and that's why I'm saying let's bring that structure so we avoid the types of arguments that we've had in the past when we're trying to say who's better, Oregon or FSU, Georgia or Oregon. So if you did it that way, I think it would be better. And I don't think there's a best way to do it, but it does rest on the assumption that no third place team in the SEC is likely to be demonstrably better than a second place team in, say, the ACC. And people may disagree, but I think this eliminates the arguments that we're likely to have and get the best teams. But what do I know? I could be wrong.
Well, let's see. This year, your third best team in the SEC would be Ole Miss, and your second place team in the ACC would be Louisville. And we could argue all night who was better. I believe Ole Miss was, but I don't think it was decidedly better. What I like about your plan, Adam, is that there's an objective nature to just say, regardless of the results, we are taking the top 2 teams in every conference. But then there is also an allowance for, okay, well, these teams in these conferences have proven to be the best of the third place teams. And therefore, if there are stronger conferences with better teams, they will get that third position. They will get those numbers 11 and 12 seeds in the playoffs.
Right. I guess my point is that it would be almost impossible to really make a convincing argument either way, whether a third place Ole Miss is, say, better than a second place team from the ACC before, of course, the game. So like a Louisville, Ole Miss, we're really not going to know. So instead of getting into this controversial and divisive debate, let's have a system that still gets the best teams in, but that errs on the side of giving it to the second place team in each conference to avoid that debate. And then you still have 2 at-large bids. So if we want to take a third place team from the SEC and the Big Ten, we can do that.
Who determines who gets the at-large bids?
I'm assuming it would be the committee. Is that? I assume that's how they're going to be doing going forward, right?
Well, yeah, they're going to select everyone outside of the conference champions.
Right. So if we ran into the problem that you're citing, then we would still have those 2 at-large bids as a safety valve to get Ole Miss in, or to get a third place team in the Big Ten in. And I think that just because I still think with the 12-team playoff, we're going to be running into the same arguments.
I don't think it's a bad model. I don't have too much of an issue with it. I would actually go back through the last 10 or 15 years and run it through, except for we've got this change in college football with no Pac-12 and with the 4 teams moving to the Big Ten and the 2 to the SEC. So it really doesn't work. But I would love to have gone through the last 10 or 15 years to run it and see who's going to show up. But I can see years the way this is headed where the Big 12 and ACC second place teams are a bit weak in comparison to a playoff field. But I don't have an issue with your playoff model.
Yeah. Well, you make that's a fair point. But I'd like to think of something better than what we have had the last few years. And I hope that it gets better. Thanks as always for having me on your show. It's always great to talk to you, Mark.
Sure, Adam. Great to have you.
Thanks.
Adam's got an interesting idea, and it unfortunately would make more sense in the previous format of college football with 5 conferences, even though that would make it more difficult in regards to, again, you would have, the 5 champions, the 5 second place teams, and then the 2 third place teams would make it. And I don't have an issue with that, except now we're going to a 4-team or a 4-conference field, and then also keep into consideration just the SEC and the Big Ten have gotten even stronger. So there was more parity 2023 and prior for this to have worked and been equitable and been just have produced a better playoff, with the Big 12 being stronger, with Texas and Oklahoma, with the Pac-12 being stronger with those 4 schools. All right. Neil, thank you so much, Neil, for your contribution. That is so kind of you. We appreciate Neil. He's been a longtime viewer. And again, we honor Neil tonight with the Nevada helmet. We know that Neil has endured some really rough seasons since that Carson Strong team in 2021? So the last 2 Nevada teams have been pretty atrocious. I believe they finished 2-10. So we do what we can here, Neil. We appreciate that Nevada football fans can find a place here at the Voice of College Football and enjoy the discussion. So thank you for that. Thank you so much, Neil. My favorite program. Thank you, Mark, for all the hard work and long hours you put into this. Us Jamokis deserve less, but we thank you. Okay. We appreciate you, Neil. Thank you so much for that. And it reminds me that here sometime in the next few weeks, it may extend sometime into March, we're going to put together a state of the state for the Voice of College Football and discuss everything that we're doing here at the Voice of College Football, everything we've got planned, what our mission is, what we want to accomplish. We want to hear from you, get your responses. We have done this each off season for the last several years. And so we don't talk college football. We just talk to all of you for as long as it takes to run through everything that we're involved in here at the Voice of College Football. And because of some changes coming for me personally here in about a month, I don't know if I'm going to do this in the next few weeks or I'm going to wait until that and address the status of the channel and channels, 15 of them. Maybe we'll do that sometime in March and really set the stage for what we're doing here at the Voice of College Football and how you can be involved. But Neil, thank you so much for that. All right. We have come to the end of the line, I suppose. No one else is calling. We've got the College Football After Dark show starting. So leave me, stay right on this same page, just right on the front page of our YouTube channel here at the Voice of College Football, the main channel. Just jump on over to the College Football After Dark. And they are revved up. You got Ben, you've got Joey, you've got Sean, you got Jackson. And keep in mind, everyone, that the way you make it on the panel, this is asked about every week, the way you make it on to the panel for the College Football After Dark show is to be either a YouTube member or a Patreon member. And I'm not going to really get into that, but that's going to be another component we're going to talk about when we go through the state of the Voice of College Football in a few weeks, is what we can do best to make those memberships all that we can make them for all of you. Again, YouTube channel membership and the Patreon membership, we try to keep those consistent because they are basically one membership. I don't want anyone feeling as though they've got to be a member of two different platforms to get bonus predictions, content, etc. But we're going to better define and we're going to supplement those two, and you can join either one and you get the same benefits: the Discord link, the predictions, the per month request. You can make a request each month that I'll deliver on bonus content as a Patreon member or a YouTube channel member right here at the Voice of College Football. But head on over. We see folks are headed on over right now. We appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Catch Ben, Joey, Sean, and Jackson on the College Football After Dark show. And remember, if you're a YouTube member or a Patreon member as well, you are welcome to join the panel each and every Sunday night. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. I've got ACC schedule breakdowns. You've probably seen them. I posted, I think, 11 today. And so check them out right here at the Voice of College Football. We'll see you on Monday.